And good morning, and welcome to the Dutch Mentor live series on Monday morning chat about leadership. And I welcome today my friend, Lieutenant David Dachinger. He has been a friend of mine. God, we'll go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, I believe. He will tell the story on how we met and what he has done over the last 20 years. But one thing is that, you come across people that impress you at the first meeting. David was one of those. He was a few years older than I am, but he was doing all the things that I thought were really cool, like making music in his home studio, and adding value to ESPN. It's kind of like stuck with me. But there's always so much more to a person than what you see over this at the service. And as I got to know David over the years, as I have seen him now retire from his job as a lieutenant firefighter, and how he has been contributing to his community is really phenomenal. And today's focus of the conversation will be around stress management. We know, especially in healthcare, nearly 1 million people have left the industry. Interesting enough, I got an email overnight from a DNP who I invited to come join my network and maybe commingle and have a conversation around leadership development and nursing, who said that, sadly to say, but after 20 years in the industry, I left 10 days ago. I can do no more. My stress levels are too high. And now we are hearing this all of the time. So without further ado, I would love to hear, from David. Tell us a little bit about your story, and tell us how you end up going into that focused area of meditation, stress management, and why it is so very important. And again, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Walter. And someday we'll have to dive deeper into our history together. But needless to say, when I first got into EMS after becoming a volunteer firefighter, Walter was my first mentor. He was the Dutch mentor back in whatever year that was, 2000 probably. And he really got me started in the EMS part of emergency services. And we connected on a number of things, including flying. So, Walter, it's great to be here.
Thank you to be here as well. Always grateful, right? That's what we have to start off with every morning when we get up.
Yes, indeed. And so, what you're talking about, Walter, is such a huge topic that we could probably talk about it for 2 weeks straight. But it's an epidemic, in my opinion, in healthcare, in emergency services, and probably a lot of other industries. But to me, healthcare and emergency services are near and dear because when it gets right down to it, when people are, when the shit's hitting the fan and people are having that worst day of their life, or they're having a health issue or been in a traumatic, health event, or any number of things, having an emergency, they need healthcare professionals and they need first responders to be, on their A game to help them through that and to kind of fix whatever's gone wrong. So for that reason, and particularly for leaders in those industries, it's like we have to make a commitment to ourselves and to our coworkers and to the public that we serve to be at our best, especially when they need us, when when it's game time. And so on one hand, we've kind of made that commitment, or we are honoring that responsibility. And at the same time, we're living in a world where stress is at all-time high levels, and particularly in these these services we're talking about. So what can we do? I think the first most important thing we can do is self-care. And that's, we hear that term all the time, but what does it really mean? It's individual, right? Everybody's got something that they can find that'll work for them to help them kind of get grounded and centered and present. And I think the word present is key, because in order for us to do our jobs as leaders in these industries, we need to be present for our customers, patients, the public. And we also need to be present for our coworkers, the people that are looking to us for leadership, the people that are perhaps above us on the chain of command, that are looking to us to, implement what their vision is and do the best for the organization. And we need to be present for ourselves and our family, so that, we're not taken down by this, this job that we've taken on. We've not taken down ourselves health-wise, mental health-wise, spiritually, and are also looking out for our family and loved ones, that they're not being affected negatively by what we're going through on the job. So that sounds great, but how do we do that? I would say that again, it's individual, and if we haven't found something that works for us, now's a good time to start looking at things.
Yeah, I really think it starts with self-awareness,
Mhm.
right? It is that you have to make the admission that not everything is well. And I think that is so important part of leadership. People who are currently in leadership positions, there's always something else that needs to be done. And it feels like, especially in healthcare, that we are firefighters, right? We go from one fire to the next fire to the next fire. But we need to get to a point where we need to slow down and we need to be more intentional to what we do. And I think that the conversation about mental wellness and spiritual wellness and physical wellness, relationship wellness, are really the sub pillars that support the foundation of leadership itself. And if those pillars are not maintained, if they are unstable, it causes undue stress and things start fracturing at that point in time. In the leadership academy, we talked a lot about this. And actually,
Mm.
my first section in the academy, we talk about leading with confident humility. So one of the areas of self-awareness is really being empathetic to yourself, or learning to love yourself, and making sure that you are not leading with pride and ego, or that you lead as an imposter. When you have conversations with your students and the people in the fire medic and the emergency services, because it is kind of an industry of bravado, right? That I am unbreakable. How do you approach that with the people who come at it with an alpha personality that that's not for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. You really have to tailor it to the personality you're dealing with. But I would say, first of all, the key word we were talking about, presence or awareness. First of all, we got to be aware that something's going on. And I have to say, as a leader, I actually had the experience of seeing one of my people that I was in the chain of command supervising going through something, and I didn't totally recognize it because I didn't sit down and have a conversation, or I didn't take him aside. It didn't have to be like taking him in the office to talk, but it could have been like go out, work out together, or take a walk around the block, or have a coffee together. And he was going through something really significant. I noticed he had lost a lot of weight, but I didn't really get that he was going through like full-blown PTSD effects and insomnia and other side effects of what he had gone through as a traumatic event. So now that I've learned about it, if I could get in the time machine and go back, I'd say we need to figure out how we can talk to the different people in our organization that we're responsible for, and even our coworkers that are also leaders, and figure out how can we start a conversation that they can relate to, that they're not going to feel threatened by. And I think some of that is being humble, and some of that is being a great listener, and some of that is just kind of tuning into what's going on with them. Like, if somebody's looking like they're off, they're not behaving in their normal way, I think it's up to us to really kind of explore what's going on. And some of that may be talking to them, some of that may be just observing them. And part B of that is we also have to back it up with being the expert. Like when we're taking on this leadership role, we're also taking on a role of expertise that we know what resources are out there, what tools or tips or advice we can give somebody, or where we can direct them to go if they're having a problem like alcohol or family issues or sleeplessness or PTSD. There are a lot of really effective tools out there, but we really need to be if they're going to put their trust in us to talk to us about the problem, I think we need to be able to help them, at least to tell them another valuable resource that can, actually be of service to them.
Yeah, I think you hit it the nail on the head, so to speak. I think as leaders, we have to recognize when we come up to the ranks, we have limited exposure to things we're really responsible for when you become a leader.
Mhm.
And the big difference between leading and managing is that, or doing for that matter, is that leading means you're actually leading people, right? We manage process and we lead people. And with that, there's an clearly identified gap. And that gap we need to close. And that gap is to have the skills, knowledge, and abilities to be able to handle these tough situations. And funny enough, I can over the years, sadly in our industry, we have lost too many people to suicide.
Mm.
And it's when you look after the fact and you go back to their social media pages, sometimes the writing was on the wall. Right now, you can't help people who don't want to be helped, but we need to be more in tune. So one of the fundamentals of leadership is love those you lead, and that's not like the loving, the touchy feely kind of love, but it's really about that filial kind of love, that genuine. So you have to get to know the people that you lead, and in the process of getting to know them, that does not mean you need to go to their barbecues and their bar mitzvahs, but you do need to get to know them and stay in touch with them. You need to, as a leader, you need to make time to have that awareness. And of course, you need to support it by continuous development of self. And that's really the part of the reason why I want to do our morning chats, is that as leaders tune in now, or the recorded sessions, is that take something away from this, right? Is one of the most underutilized services in large companies is their employee assistance program, because there's such a stigma to that. That's counseling. That is like, that's for other people. And I think that the other word that you said is that we need to make sure that we learn how we can relate to people and not compare, right? It is like, oh, I'm not as bad as he or she is. Well, but that doesn't get you anywhere, right? Can we relate to each other? And how can we then be more aware and live in the now and pick up those little nuances? So give me an example that as you have, as you work with somebody over time, and I believe in meditating 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes per day is really powerful to allow yourself to be more centered. Tell me a little bit about how would you teach somebody the basic fundamentals of meditation, of which you can, of which of course can study for many years and become whatever you want it to be in that field. But how do you get started with something like that to get people to be more aware of their stresses and how to overcome them?
Yeah. So the first thing is I'll say that meditation, as we've known it, the cliche of the guy sitting on a mountaintop, in a lotus position, quiet, with candles burning, whatever, that's wonderful. And it worked back in the day. But this is not the same time. We're in a new time where people's minds are more active than ever. We're being bombarded by information and news and training and information and meetings. And, what I'm talking about, the data
Yeah.
overload. And the mind is, most people's minds are now working overtime to keep up with that. So that cliche, that old paradigm of meditation really doesn't work in today's day and age. However, we've been trained in a way of meditating that involves doing it in the midst of your chaotic, stressful day. I've literally meditated in the middle of Times Square, on the red steps there on a crazy night where there's 10,000 things going on around. And the point being that we can get calm in the moment, we can get centered in the moment, and that is the most say practical type of meditation, because if we're in the middle at work and we're in the middle of the stressful moment, whatever's going on, putting out fires, dealing with people, dealing with our public, the customers, that's when we need to be present, centered, and aware. And by using some really simple imagery and being guided within a minute or two, we can really shift into a state of calm and kind of calm that mind down. The old adage is, slow down to speed up. If our mind is racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, can we really effectively make those critical decisions and be present and aware for our coworkers who may need us to be kind of aware and sensitive to what's going on with them, and to be present for whatever else is going on at work to be effective at our job. The more we can calm the mind, the more we can kind of just let intuition and other, let's say, ideas that wouldn't ordinarily occur to us to come up. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of a
Yeah, no, it does. Absolutely. I think that, I live by the equation E times R equals O. It is that life events will happen. We tend to react to things, and reaction causes undue stress. And of course, that gives you then an outcome. But what I encourage people to learn to do is that if you have a live event that takes place, is to at least process the information to the point. And there's some of it can be done in nanoseconds because decisions sometimes need to be made in nanoseconds. And other times you take a little bit longer, including taking a moment of have a centered thinking. In other words, we respond to things.
Hmm.
And then the outcomes tend to be much better, that they're more sustainable and that are better thought out, and really with the thought process of what is the downstream impact of of the decision that I need to make or the action that I'm going to take at this moment in time. The second part is that I think that a lot of people talk about stress, a lot of people talk about meditation, a lot of people talk about all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, it is about taking action. Right? If you could talk about it but not do it and not get the benefit of it. So taking action, actually doing it in a measured way. And I encourage my students to maintain a personal scorecard. If they say my Zen state, or in other words, my ideal state for myself, it includes a meditation session. I want you to document every day. Did I do it? Yes or no? Did I do it to the fullest extent? How can I continue to improve upon that? For yourself, and knowing of what life has offered you and where you are today, how did you take action, right? How did you get started? How have you maintained it and continue to grow upon that? And what has been the benefit of all of this in your personal life?
Right. So you could say that this started when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and started the treatment journey with chemo and radiation, and having to put life on hold to go through that treatment. Um, and I saw how brutal it was and how hard it is to be in that patient identity. And you're traumatized by the diagnosis. So at that moment, I guess after the dust settled, my wife and I, who had some roots in meditation and mindfulness, we started doing a practice. It was not only meditation, but positive affirmations. We would literally go on a walk together called the gratitude walk. And, I think a lot of us can get into a very negative state, seeing what's going on around us and how, we can feel powerless with state of affairs at work or the state of affairs in the world. But we can shift that into a positive mindset simply by doing some very short gratitude statements like, I'm grateful that I have great health care. I'm grateful I have wonderful family and friends. I'm grateful that the sun is out today and it's not a blizzard. Simple stuff. And it's amazing how quick that can shift you into a positive mind space. But we did start to use more meditation when I was in chemo, sitting in the chair, getting the infusion. It's like you got nothing but time on your hands. So I started just bringing the earbuds and putting on meditative programs. Fast forward to the end of treatment, got cleared of cancer, and we decided to pay forward our gifts. And that was to create Loving Meditations, which is an app and a book. And that is, it was geared towards the cancer community, but really it could be used by anybody.
Well, first, congratulations for beating cancer, and we are all better off because you are here today. And not only taking action, but also paying it forward, right, to the person that is going to be in need. I know that your website is up, and I would encourage people to go visit that. It's interesting. We all get different ways of starting this, and sadly, it often is because of a traumatic event. But we really should think about this more as a proactive, preventative. You mentioned about your gratitude talks about how that had a positive impact on your brain. Well, our brain, although it has two hemispheres, it's not equally divided between the negative brain and the positive brain. The negative brain probably occupies about 2/3 of the space, and the positive brain only about 1/3. I think it's important for us to have that a greater awareness of the power of the brain, that if you really want to have a life of what I refer to as positude, living with a positive attitude, that requires daily practice. Gratitude, words of gratitude walks, doing exercise about a glass half full versus half empty is important to do. And it is like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, that negative brain has a tendency to want to slip back into place and be the overwhelming power within your life. And I think that really kind of takes away from living your fullest life, so to speak. All right, so we're ending the talk. But I always say that our human brain, as we talk about it, the capacity is about 20 minutes. So as we start wrapping it up, the conversation today on a Monday morning about leadership, What are the parting words? What are the things that you would say to somebody who comes here for the first time, might have their own struggles with their mental wellness, physical wellness, spiritual wellness, relationship wellness, or even their personal finance, right? That really should be the fifth pillar. What would you tell them? What advice could you give them that will, hopefully result in similar feelings as you are enjoying today?
Yeah, it really comes back to what we started with, Walter, and that is, we really need to take care of ourselves in order to be effective leaders, to be effective spouses, effective parents, effective friends, to find whatever it is that works for you. It doesn't have to look like the next person's thing, but it could be gratitude journaling, or, you love animals, or you really enjoy nature, or you do like meditating or yoga. But find that thing and find a way to bring it to your workspace as well. It's sometimes you just may have to slip off into the bathroom or a private space. But I mean, I've literally worked with dispatchers who, after a crazy traumatic call, would just take a 2-minute break and watch one of the meditations and just kind of reset. So it's individual, but there's something out there that will definitely resonate with you and be a tool that you can use in your daily stress.
Thank you, David. I'm personally, I'm a big proponent of micro timeouts. I think you kind of described that. Is that multiple times during the day, no matter where you are, that could be at the critical care bedside with a patient with 5 pumps and a ventilator beeping. Taking the 1 or 2 minutes and really kind of like find that center and remind yourself why you're there, and the impact you're having on somebody else's life, and feel that breath go deep into the soul, and exhale after that is really, really helpful. So thank you for that solid advice. Again, we will have a follow-up conversation probably in the weeks to come around other leadership topics, as we you have a gift and multiple different areas. But I think it's wise for both of us to leave it with having a conversation with the leaders who are watching today. You have to take charge. Taking charge and taking action on your part is not only to look inward on how well you are doing and making sure that you are not burning the candle on both sides, but it is about learning about this for your people. And that's really the outward thing, right? The genuine care for your team. Gain the knowledge and insights on what stress is and what burnout is, and try to do this with your team in a preventative way. Be the first one to stand up. Again, circulate the telephone number of EAP. Have them come in and have a conversation with it. Make it a part of who we are today. Make it part of the fabric and the DNA of the organization. That's what genuine care is about. And it is not afterwards when we go to somebody's funeral and say, God, I saw this couple of posts. We should have done something, or we should have done this, or we should have done that. It's too late. So it's part of our daily responsibility as leaders to be very attentive to this, to be present, and to be, keep a watchful eye on the silent words and pictures around us, as well as keeping door open for others to come to you and give you a heads up. David, with that said, I think we had a great session. It was a whole lot of fun. Is that the Mets colors, by the way, you're representing in that
I'd
orange?
say it's
Or is
more of
it,
the New York State colors, but it's also the Mets colors. So yeah.
Well, let's hope for the Mets' sake that they have a great year. Wherever their coach goes, usually success follows after he leaves, after he gets fired, I believe, right? Is that how Buck Showalter works? But again, great connecting this morning. Look forward to our next chat, and let's be there for everybody out there to make sure they find the right time and right place, to find a place of centeredness and self-awareness that will lead to better outcomes. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Walter.